It's time to make some early decisions for Game Week 10. Welcome to FPL Mate, my name is Dan, and today we're going to be having a look at some of those early decisions we may need to make ahead of the new game week that is coming up soon. Of course, Game Week 9 is over. Big shout out to all of you guys who had Van der Ven in your team. What a huge score, 23 points from him, absolutely crazy. And for those of you who sold him or benched him, of course, commiserations there. I think it's one of those situations where probably the right decision, wrong outcome, but I'm sure that's probably not helping anyone and cheering anyone up right now. But in today's video, we are going to be talking about my current team, how it looks, how I'm set up for Game Week 10, and look at some of those decisions, maybe thinking about some Joao Pedro replacements, which we might have to make due to early price changes sooner rather than later. We're going to look at the new best midfielder in the game, potentially. 4 million defenders, we need to talk about them. We'll look at the price changes and my early transfer thoughts and, of course, those decisions we need to make. So this is what I'm looking at right now, guys, with my team. Raya, Gabriel, Chow, Richards, Bruno, Semenyo, Kudus, Saka, Enzo, Joao Pedro, and Haaland. I think mostly the team is looking pretty strong. Have some concerns around the likes of Joao Pedro and Kudus. Everyone else I'm reasonably happy with right now, but I think we maybe need to adjust to some new information from Game Week 10. So let's go ahead and do that. But first, here's a question for you. Are you currently running your FPL team without Gabriel in defense? Of course not. Going without that Arsenal defensive cover is way too risky, just like using the internet without ExpressVPN. Did you know that in many countries, including the UK, your internet service providers are required to keep logs of your websites that you visit, even if you use incognito mode? ExpressVPN solves this problem by allowing you to connect to the internet via secure and encrypted servers, which means your ISP can't log your activity, your browsing history remains a mystery, and it protects you from hackers. Now, when talking about VPNs, a lot of people say they use it to unlock video content that is locked by geography, and don't get me wrong, I do this all the time whenever I'm visiting other countries and want to watch my UK shows, but these days I mostly use ExpressVPN for two things. One, connecting to public Wi-Fi without running the risk of hackers stealing my passwords and credit card information. And two, bypassing new web restrictions that seem to be blocking and filtering more and more content every day. I just changed my location to a country with slightly more normal rules. Now, my vrienden, ik denk dat ik vandaag Netherlands ben. So, find out how you can get up to 4 extra months of ExpressVPN by scanning the QR code on screen, clicking the link in the video description, or by going to expressvpn.com/FPLMateYT. Okay, guys, let's have a look at some Joao Pedro replacements. And I think this one is going to be pretty simple. And I think we can probably narrow this down to 5 players, really. And that is going to be Haaland, Mateta, Voltemada, Thiago, and Welbeck. Now, what I've got here, guys, is I've pulled up a list of all of the forwards in FPL, or at least the regular starters, and ordered them by expected goal involvements per start. As you can see, Haaland has 1.1 here, Mateta 0.9, so just behind him. Voltemada 0.5, Thiago and Welbeck also 0.5 expected goal involvements per game. Of course, we've got Beto on 0.5 as well, but given that he is maybe a little bit more rotation risk, I think maybe we will leave him. Not the greatest finisher either, but certainly there's a lot of players here we can definitely look at who do look like nice potential replacements here, who have been getting points. Everyone else is pretty much rubbish. And actually, really, everyone else, other than, I don't know, maybe Ekatike, I think there's an argument to sell everyone else on this list, 4 players in the top 5 here. So, yeah, who are you going to go for? Hopefully, you've already got Haaland. If you haven't, then he's your Joao Pedro replacement or Bowen replacement or whoever you have right now you want to sell. Pretty straightforward. But if not, who are we going for? Can you afford the extra money for Mateta? 0.1 million more expensive. Do you have to go for Voltemada instead, Thiago or Welbeck? They've all got decent stats. I think ideally you probably want to go for Mateta, but we're going to check out these fixtures and kind of go a little bit further on this one. So what I've done is I have hopefully ordered the 4 forwards that we were just speaking about, excluding Haaland, in order of best to worst fixtures, starting off with Mateta in the number 1 place. And he's got some nice fixtures here. Brentford and Brighton at home, followed by Wolves away. And we've got Burnley away there as well in our 5 game weeks time. So there's some really nice fixtures here. Even Man United at home, Fulham away. These are perfectly playable fixtures. We've got Welbeck here, probably in second place, with Leeds at home the next fixture. Crystal Palace, Brentford, Forest, Aston Villa and West Ham. It's not too bad, really. Voltemada has West Ham and Brentford. I like West Ham in particular. But then we get to Brentford, Man City, Everton away, even Spurs at home. Don't love these fixtures, but they're certainly okay. I wonder if maybe some of these fixtures are going to be a bit tougher for him. And we also do have maybe Wissa coming back at some point within the next few weeks as well. So there's maybe some rotation risk that is going to creep in for Voltemada at some point, and that could be after these next two fixtures. Then you've got Man City, and then it could be rotation risk sets in there. So some concerns there. Thiago, I really like as a pick. He's the cheapest guy on this list. He is not rotation risk. You could say maybe Welbeck has some rotation risk, but when he's firing, he's firing. But Thiago is going to be nailed on. But the fixtures, particularly over the next two, maybe not perfect. We've got Arsenal in that run as well. We've got Spurs away in this run. Brighton and Burnley look really nice. So I wonder if you were to pick up Thiago, could he be more of a rotation player within your squad? So you can rotate him in and out, maybe sometimes switch to playing with a kind of 4 or 5 defenders even, and some of those weeks you're going to play Thiago, some of those weeks you're going to bench him for one of your defenders. And I think that is possibly a play, particularly if you are going to go for someone a little bit cheaper in the forward position. What should be said is all 4 of these forwards are penalty takers for their team, which is really, really nice. Welbeck actually on free kicks as well, which is pretty useful as well. So they're in form. They mostly have good fixtures with some exceptions. There is some rotation risk for Welbeck and Voltemada, but I think Mateta is probably the player that ticks the most boxes. And if you are dead certain you do want to get Mateta, even if you are 0.1 million short of getting Mateta, I'd try and find a way of making that happen, maybe making a downgrade elsewhere in your team. I think that's probably my thoughts right now. Thankfully, I do have 0.2 in the bank, so I can afford to go Joao Pedro to Mateta, and that is probably what I would do. He seems like the most sensible choice of these players. However, I want to go over one more point on the forwards, and that is the cheap guys. So we've got Krupi Jr., Mark Gu, Chido Obi, these really, really cheap forwards. And it could be that the solution to all of this is to just downgrade one of your forwards all the way down to a super cheap spot and just say, listen, I don't want to play with 3 forwards anymore. I want to play with just 2 playing forwards in my squad, or 1 playing forward in my squad even potentially. And that way you can just go super cheap in your forwards spots and really reinvest that money into other areas of your squad, upgrade that midfield, upgrade that defense, and kind of do that instead. Because obviously, in the forward position, outside of Haaland, nobody is super convincing. Mateta, Welbeck, Voltemada, Thiago doing well at the moment, but is that going to be a long-term thing? We don't really know. Looking through these cheap guys, Mark Gu is obviously 4.2 million, so really cheap, maximum savings there, but he does eat up a Chelsea spot. That could come and haunt you later down the line, potentially. Obi, maybe a similar situation with Manchester United. He is 4.3 million. There is also Barnes at Burnley, who's 4.3 million, I believe. So maybe that's the solution there. Cooper Jr., a bit more expensive, 4.6 million. Is that going to be worth spending that extra little tiny bit of money? Cooper Jr. certainly has the best minutes potential of the cheap forwards, but Evan Nilsson is going to be back within the next week or 2. So this week, Bournemouth face Man City. You're probably not going to play Cooper Jr. this game week 10. After that, game week 11, Evan Nilsson's probably back, and that Krupa Jr. probably back on the bench. Probably. We don't know for sure. But it seems like Krupa Jr. is not going to be a regular starter if Evan Nilsson is fit. That is the latest news on that one. So, yeah, those are your Joao Pedro kind of replacements you could be looking at. I wanted to have a quick look at this, guys. And this is the players with the most points after game week 9. And this, by the way, guys, all of the stats today are before the Spurs versus Everton game. And there might be some other slightly inaccurate stats from Sunday. We'll make sure all of the updated, best possible, accurate stats are available in tomorrow's Buy, Sell, Keep, Avoid video. But for now, this will have to do. But what I noticed here is, I know a lot of people have been saying, look, you look at the highest scoring players and only a few of them are forwards and midfielders. And I've kind of highlighted the forwards and midfielders here, and they're Haaland, Semenyo, Mbeumo, Rice, Caicedo, Antony, and Thiago. These are your top scoring midfielders and forwards in the game. And, they make up just a small percentage, really, of the top scoring players, because everyone else is mostly a defender and the odd goalkeeper in here as well. So we're seeing that a lot. I know a lot of people have spoken about that, but what I wanted to point at more here was actually the big gap between your Haaland, your Semenyo, and the next best midfielder. So if you look at, you take Semenyo, for example, 73 points so far. You have to drop down 22 points before you get to the next best midfielder. That is a huge, huge drop. So it's not only that there aren't many midfielders scoring points, but actually there is a huge gap between the very best, if you like, in Semenyo. Even he's slowing down in his form a little bit. And the next best one. So how do you choose which midfielders you are going to go for? It's becoming really, really difficult. I think players like Rice and Caicedo, I don't know if they're going to be reliable long term. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Anthony, Thiago, they had some nice hot flashes, I guess. Anthony has had his hot moment, I guess, early in the season. Thiago more recently. And so it kind of leaves us with one player if we're looking for midfielders who have actually been reliable this season, and that is Mbeumo. So is Bryan Mbeumo the new best midfielder in FPL? Well, I think he genuinely might be. And actually, in recent game weeks, he's actually been putting up better numbers than even Semenyo. So what we've got here, guys, is Mbeumo's stats. We see 0.29 XG per game, 0.17 XA per game. Obviously, we see him on some corners and some set pieces there, which is pretty handy. Maybe backup penalty taker to Bruno Fernandes. And when we look at the expected goal involvements, he ranks 4th so far this season per start. Only behind, well, not even really behind. He's kind of level with Bruno, Enzo, and Gakpo for those kind of numbers. So he's got pretty strong numbers per start, which is pretty impressive. I think the per 90 numbers are slightly different, but per start, Mbeumo's looking pretty strong right now. So we like the look of this. This looks like a pretty strong pick that we could potentially go for. The fixtures are pretty nice. We've got Forest up next, who are still bad, apparently. We've got Spurs, Everton, Crystal Palace, maybe a little more middling fixtures. I think Everton at home isn't too bad. Spurs, Crystal Palace, maybe average fixtures away from home. Then we've got West Ham and Wolves after that as well. So there are some decent fixtures here. And Mbeumo's a bit in good form. He's playing very well. Man United as a team very much on the rise at the moment. So is it a case of finding that 8.1 million and trying to invest in Mbeumo? And how are you going to do that? Is it, going to be a case of downgrading, making that downgrade in the forward position so you can upgrade one of your midfielders to Bryan Mbeumo? I don't think you're going to sell Bruno. I don't think you're going to sell Saka. But adding Mbeumo in addition to, Bruno and Saka, if you have him, could really work very well. Bryan Mbeumo, by the way, we've spoken about him on the channel this season already numerous times. He has been a player who is putting up good numbers, but hasn't always found the form. Now he has that form as well as the good numbers. This is, the player to go for right now. So really like Bryan Mbeumo. If you're going for a new midfielder, quite frankly, he is the guy. So a lot of talk on cheap defenders this week as we see Rodon with his mega haul with the DEFCON and the goal. And I wanted to just kind of have a look and see how these cheap defenders are really doing. Are they worth investing in? Are they really any better than any other defender? And I think I have got a conclusion on this one, to be honest. But I think what we're seeing here is Mukiele, Alderete, Rodon have all been good in their own ways. Mukiele and Alderete playing for a strong Sunderland defence. There have been a few clean sheets there, and the defensive contribution numbers are really good for these guys. Mukiele with a 71% hit rate, Alderete with a 57% hit rate, so really, really nice. Rodon has 2 goals, so that has boosted him up in this season. And actually, the expected goals conceded per game for Rodon and for Leeds is slightly better than Sunderland, really. But the DEFCON hasn't typically been there for Rodon. I know he got it in Game Week 9, but he is not really as much of a DEFCON player as many other players that we are picking. But still, in 1/3 of games, that's not too bad. That's still very, very good. And that's why you're going to see him, getting some points in some of the times. But yeah, really interesting stuff. My question is it just a case of cheap defenders? They are insanely good. They are, you have to have these cheap defenders. Well, I'm not really sure that's the conclusion to be drawn here. What really we're seeing, and what I've done is we've got a table underneath for points per game for those for all of defenders. And what we're really seeing is so far this season, basically any defender who has happened to get an attacking contribution so far this season will be on this list of top scoring defenders. doesn't necessarily mean these players are going to get attacking contributions every game, but in the small sample size, they have. Mukiele, Alderete, Rodon, their XG per game data suggests they're probably going to get attacking returns or goals maybe once every 10 to 15 games. We haven't even had 10 to 15 games yet, so yeah, they're up on their I suppose their variance at the moment. Maybe that evens out over a slightly long period of time. And it's a case of guessing who is going to be the next defender to score. And really in this list, what we're seeing is a combination of players with three factors. First of all, you've got your clean sheets, obviously. Then we're looking for players who regularly get defensive contributions. And we're looking at Gabriel, we're looking at Mukiele. Even Gay has been pretty good for that. Senesi, Alderete, and several other defenders are going to be high-scoring defenders so far, and will continue to be, who are good DEFCON defenders. The other final thing is that expected goals, because what we're seeing a lot of now is a player, and Rodon almost got it this week. We see Mukiele get it. We've seen Alderete. It's the holy trinity of the clean sheet. Well, the quadrutity, is that a thing? Of the clean sheet, the goal, and the defensive contributions, 2 points there, and also 3 bonus points. Rodon almost got it. We've seen other players get it. And when you get that, it's 17 points. And it's absolutely huge. It is as many points as a striker would get for scoring a hat-trick. So how are we going to do this? We need to find defenders who play for at least okay defenses, because you can play by fixtures. We need to make sure they have XG potential. We need to make sure they have decent DEFCON percentage, decent DEFCON numbers as well. And yeah, I think the bonus points after that will probably come pretty naturally. So is it a case of Mukiele, Alderete, and Rodon are particularly good for value for money? Absolutely yes. But in reality, they are 3 players who happen to fit this criteria of players who play for at least decent defenses who are capable of getting clean sheets. They are defenders with a bit of goal threat there, and they are DEFCON defenders. And that is why we see these players with the points they've had. So, yeah, basically, yes, Mukiele, Alderete, Rodon are great, but so are Gabriel. So is, I don't know, any other defender you think has attacking threat and DEFCON potential. And there's a few, to be fair. And I think we'll probably deep dive on them in tomorrow's video, to be fair. Let's have a look at some price changes, because this is going to be important for those early decisions. And it looks like Thiago is actually going up in price tonight. So if you're tight on budget, you may have to move early. He's 6.1 million now, and he's projected, according to the Fantasy Football Hub, the tools, you know, he is destined to go up in price tonight. Livramento, Scarlet, and Reinders going down. I know there's probably a few Reinders owners out there. And we could see Burn, Mateta, and Burmo, Madueke. No, not Madueke. Burn and Mateta and Burmo go up tomorrow. So they are, you know, heading in the direction that we might see them go up in price very soon. A few players going down there as well. Madueke, White, Aretha Balaga. I don't think many people have these players. Joao Pedro is going to be fine for at least a few days. So not going to be too much change on Joao Pedro. So no worries there. And I think Voltamada, you're fine for a few days as well on him. So yeah, midweek games, because this is the one thing putting me off making those early transfers, and maybe it should put you guys off as well, because there is EFL Cup games, League Cup games in the midweek this week. And, you know, you never know, there could be some injuries in here somewhere or another that could impact things. We might see players playing way too many minutes. We could see all sorts. So, yeah, we've got Brentford, Fulham playing on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, we've got Arsenal versus Brighton, Liverpool versus Crystal Palace. Man City are going to play Swansea, Wolves versus Chelsea, Newcastle versus Spurs. And actually, a lot of these games are pretty tough games where we expect to see a lot of teams playing very strong teams. I would imagine Brentford, Fulham might be some rotation there, but Arsenal and Brighton will put up pretty strong teams. You'll imagine Liverpool and Crystal Palace would as well. Man City, well, there's always rotation with Man City, and I think some of their, you know, players recently coming back from injury might get some game time in that game. Wolves versus Chelsea should be pretty strong for both teams, and same with Newcastle and Spurs, as those two teams will be very eager to add to their silverware from last season. However, Bournemouth, Sunderland, Man United, Aston Villa, Everton, Leeds, Burnley, Nottingham Forest, and West Ham, no fixture. So, you know, there is potential to go early on someone like Mbermo, for example. That actually, you know, maybe could work for you guys. So those are the teams with no midweek fixture. Of course, they'll play in Game Week 10 at the weekend. So, okay, guys, we have some final decisions to be made. Thinking of all of the things I should be thinking about, really. So, Joao Pedro to Mateta before the price rise. Do I go for it? Do I see how these midweek games play out first? Do we wait until after those games? Do I move Joao Pedro to a different forward and invest some more money in midfield/defense? Could I go to Igor Thiago, for example, and, you know, maybe think about actually going more for a four at the back formation? Do I do Kudus to Sarr? That's another decision that I'm thinking about. Kudus obviously doesn't have amazing underlying numbers right now, and his fixtures coming up are not great. Saying that, Chelsea at home right now feels like quite a good fixture, so I'm a little hesitant. I have 2 free transfers, a little bit of money in the bank. Could I do Kudus to Sarr? Would that improve my team? I'm not sure. But the alternative is to just play 4 at the back. Do I bench Semenyo away against City, Kudus at home to Chelsea, or maybe even Enzo away to Spurs? If I bench one of these guys, I could potentially play Alderete, who I think is going to be back in game week 10. If everything is fine with his concussion protocol, he will be available to play at home against Everton. And Sunderland have been a good defense. He's a DEFCON defender. And actually, like we say, those defenders are doing really well right now. Senesi will probably stay on my bench then. Defenders generally is looking good for me. We've got Gabriel with the aerial threat against Burnley. We've got Chow, who is probably the biggest aerial threat at Newcastle right now. He's taking the most shots among Newcastle defenders, and he's become that target man from set pieces. Against West Ham, that's going to be pretty nice. Richards, not really much of a target man, but he is a DEFCON guy, so I'm not expecting the 17-pointer from Richards, but Gabriel, Chow, could these guys be my 17-pointers? Because that, I think, is what we're probably on the hunt for right now, those 17-pointer defenders. Can we get them, or at least most of the 17 points that they can potentially offer for you guys? So those are the key decisions for me this game week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I've never really done a video like this before, but I thought, you know, maybe we'll test it out, see if you guys like the idea of an early thoughts type video. If you did like this video, or you want to see this every game week, please do let me know. It's really, really good feedback. If there's anything you'd like to see in these videos or wouldn't like to see in these videos, let me know as well, because yeah, I'm not sure if this is going to be a regular thing or not. I'm hoping that it can be, though. That's the hope, so we can get some Sunday content out each and every game week. But if you did enjoy, make sure you drop a like. It really helps me know whether I did a good job or not. Please subscribe if you haven't done already, and don't forget to check out ExpressVPN using the link in the description. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back for Buy, Sell, Keep, Avoid tomorrow, and I'll see you later, mates. Bye-bye.